What's up, guys? Welcome to the Second Take. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jonah.
And we are back to talk finally about the NFC. Jonah and I's favorite conference. We have a little bit of bias there since our favorite teams are in the East, which we will talk about next week. But we're going to talk about the NFC West and the NFC South today. So let's get it started with the San Francisco 49ers.
So yeah, I think out of all the teams in the NFL, maybe the 49ers have fallen the farthest, the fastest. They were in the Super Bowl a few years back when Jim Harbaugh was still their coach. Now he's at my beloved Michigan in college football, which I'm sure we'll be talking about at some point later on in this season.
Yeah, he's made enough noise.
Yeah, exactly. But the 49ers now are practically unrecognizable from that team that went to the Super Bowl. Colin Kaepernick, who was their quarterback, is now backing up Blaine Gabbert, which is a development that I don't think a lot of people saw coming after he led a team to the Super Bowl. They've lost a lot of pieces on the defense. Patrick Willis being the most notable. Alvin Smith also gone, having gotten himself in some trouble. To put it lightly, there's no more Michael Crabtree. There's no more Anquan Bolden. A lot of the pieces from the offensive line are gone. Frank Gore's not here. Vernon Davis is gone. So, if you're thinking that this 49ers team is the team that went to the Super Bowl, it's not. It's a totally different team. They brought in Chip Kelly to kind of turn around the ship. I think you and I are both pretty dubious about the effects of that, having seen a lot of play coaching with the Eagles.
Yep.
So I'm not exactly confident that he can turn around this team, especially with Blaine Gabbert at QB. To me, I don't know why they're rolling with Gabbert at starting quarterback. I understand he played better than Kaepernick did last year, but I feel like you got to give Kelly the chance to turn Kaepernick around, no?
I mean, Kaepernick just perfectly fits what Kelly wants to do. Kaepernick's a quarterback that Kelly would have had at Oregon, and he runs the same offense he ran in Oregon. So, I thought they fit perfectly together. I don't know what I'm missing. I know Kaepernick has a dead arm, but I still don't know what. I still would start him.
I think the biggest issue with Kaepernick right now is his confidence shot.
Rightly so.
Right. And because he's had a really bad stretch, and I guess the hope is that a new coaching staff is going to turn that around. But I think your ceiling is pretty low if Gabbert's your quarterback. He did play better last year than he ever played in Jacksonville. I will give him credit for that. But at the same time, he's still not a high ceiling guy, and his best weapon on offense is Torrey Smith, who
he's not good unless he has a good receiver around him.
Exactly. He needs someone better than him to be the other receiver. He's really a number 2 receiver.
Yes.
And he's being asked to play as a number 1 receiver in San Francisco. So I like Carlos Hyde a lot at running back. I think he's one of the better running backs in the league right now. And their offensive line isn't bad. I know I always talk about the offensive line. So it's just a thing I like to do. But I think they could have a solid running game, but I just think the passing game is going to be pretty much nothing. And I don't know, they still have some pieces on defense, but they had a lot of those pieces last year, and it didn't really result in a good defense then. So I'm kind of taking a wait-and-see approach with the defense.
And then you added a completely offensive-minded coach who's probably not going to do a lot with the defense.
Right. He did not do a good job with the Eagles' defense. Let's just put it that way.
He did make them faster, which I don't know if that helps, but it probably would help the 49ers a little bit, but he doesn't necessarily make them better talent-wise.
Yeah, I think the problem with Chip Kelly is he has such a philosophy and he sticks to it against any evidence that it's not working. So
against all evidence, it's not working.
He basically turned over the entire roster of the Eagles, and they were right back where they started, if not worse, and it didn't improve the team. So he's kind of remaking this team in his image in the same way. And I like a lot of the pieces on this defense. I think DeForest Buckner, who was their first-round pick, is going to be solid as a 3-4 end. I like Eric Armstead at the other end. They still have Navarro Bowman, who knows if he's going to be 100%, but he's still around. So there's pieces on the defense, but I don't really trust Chip Kelly to handle the defense, and I just don't see a passing game emerging out of this team either, so I'm not that confident.
Yeah, so, I mean, Torrey Smith, all he's going to do is stretch the field for you, so that's what you'd like out of your, maybe your second receiver, if not your third receiver. So that's a problem that he's going to be the main target, especially because they lost Vernon Davis, so they have no tight. I know they lost him last year, but no tight end still. No receivers like we just talked about. Carlos Hyde, I'm not as convinced yet, just because he's still so young. Last year he did have a good year for half the season, then injuries got him. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen now. The only problem with teams that are bad with good running backs is that the running back doesn't get the ball because they're always losing. So that's going to be put on the quarterback's shoulders to get points on the board, not Carlos Hyde. So that, I mean, although he is good, I don't think he's going to be able to help them very much. But like Jonah said, they still have a recognizable defense at the worst. I'm a huge fan of Eric Reed in the secondary. Tremaine Brock's okay. And then obviously Bowman, Aaron Lynch, good pass rusher, Eric Armstead, and see what DeForest Buckner can bring this year. But this is not a good football team, and I have them at 4-12, and I could really see them being worse.
I'm going to put them at 5-11, which is the same record they had last year. There's definitely a shakeup with this team. I see it as pretty much a lateral move. And I think they'll be able to pull out a couple games. I think their defense is not bad. I think it could be a middle-of-the-road defense, which is not to say it's going to be a good team, but I think they'll be the same record as they had last year.
Either way, not good, and probably towards the bottom of this division, if not the bottom of this division.
Yeah.
So then we have I was about to say St. Louis. Then we have the LA Rams.
Yeah, we're going to be doing this a lot. We're still getting used to this. Obviously, the Los Angeles Rams. This is also a team with a lot of turnover. It's a team that seems to finish 7-9 every season. That's kind of like Jeff Fisher's MO. I don't know. He continues to stick around the league despite finishing with 7 or 8 wins basically every single season. Hardly an inspiring start to your first year in LA. But
they're 2-0 so far.
Yeah, they are. They came back against the Cowboys in that opener at the LA Coliseum, so they do have a couple wins under their belt. It looks like they're probably not going to start Jared Goff at quarterback to start the year. That seems to be the indication that they're going to roll with Case Keenum at the beginning of the season. However, I would not be remotely surprised to see Goff starting before the season ends. Teams always have plans to give their rookie quarterback a year, but those rarely happen unless it's like an Aaron Rodgers situation where you have a guy like Brett Favre in front of him. If there's a mediocre guy in front of your first-round pick, chances are your first-round pick is going to be starting before long. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Jared Goff playing quarterback for the team eventually. With regard to the rest of the offense, Todd Gurley is great. He had an absolutely great rookie season. He looks to be one of the best running backs in the league already. I have a lot of confidence in him. Other than Gurley, though, I don't love this offense. I like the pick of Pharaoh Cooper. I'm a fan of him as a potential wideout, but he's also pretty raw.
Didn't you see him get crushed by who the heck? I think it might have been Wilcox. He got crushed, and then the ball popped up and got picked off for Goff's first interception. You see that?
Right.
Yeah.
So he definitely has boom or bust potential, I think. And I don't really like the rest of the receiving core here. Tavon Austin has pretty much been a bust. I don't really have a lot of confidence in him being a big help to this team. Their offensive line is not very good either. They've lost some guys on the line lately. I haven't really done a lot to replace them. So I like their running game, but kind of like you said with the 49ers, this isn't a great team, and so they're not going to be able to just put the ball in Gurley's hands and let him do stuff because they're not going to be ahead in a lot of games, I don't think.
Right.
So I think this offense is going to have a lot of trouble scoring points, but the defense, I think, is really good. The secondary is only okay, I think. I like Tremaine Johnson. I think he's solid, but other than that, I don't love the pieces they have in the secondary. I think LaMarcus Joyner is he's going to have to step in and be a starting corner after Janoris Jenkins left for the Giants. But I think that that isn't their first year starting corners often struggle. So I can see that happening. However, their defensive line is one of the best in the league. They have Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers, which might be the best 4-3 defensive tackle combination in the league. And they have Robert Quinn at defensive end. They lost Chris Long, but Robert Quinn, he's never had the same season as he did in that 20-sack season a couple of years back when he won Defensive Player of the Year. But he still is one of the best impact pass rushers in football, and I'm a big fan of Alec Ogletree and Mark Barron as well. So they have a lot of pieces in this front seven that I like a lot. So I think their defense will probably pick up a lot of the slack on offense.
Yeah, so kind of like Jonah just said it, the running back, Todd Gurley's great, but will he have the ball in his hands enough? The fact that they have this is an extremely great Todd Gurley, because the fact that he is so good behind probably, it's at least a bottom 5 offensive line, if not one of the worst. That's pretty impressive that he can be that good with no blocking whatsoever. And, I mean, their best receiver is probably Pharaoh Cooper already, and he was drafted in, 4th or 5th round this year. So that's even scarier. And then if I'm the Rams, I don't start Jared Goff hopefully all year long, just because that's a year that he can get hurt. Basically, is the way I look at it. You're not gonna win. You're not gonna make the playoffs with or without him. And if he's your quarterback of the future, I don't necessarily want to put him in a situation where his life could be in danger with the teams that they play, the terrible offensive line, and the lack of weapons he has. Defensively, secondary lost a lot. Jenkins is gone. Rodney McLeod is gone. They basically chose Tremaine Johnson to give an extension to, and that hasn't worked out so far. They've kind of been at odds and ends. So, I mean, for their sake, let's hope he signs. But, I mean, it's still, with the defensive line they have and the linebackers they have, it'll be okay. I think the defensive line is the best in the league. Jonah just talked about it, but I mean, I literally would be terrified as an offensive lineman going up against Aaron Donald, who's probably the 2nd or 3rd best defensive player in the NFL. Linebacking core is a little interesting for me. They just lost James Laurinaitis, so I'm wondering who's going to play middle linebacker. The depth chart I looked at. Yeah, that's what I just looked at that depth chart, and I don't know. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. I just don't know if he's a middle linebacker that is going to be a signal caller. I kind of like him more as a outside linebacker, strong side, maybe with a little pass rush because he's so long and lanky and strong. But I know they moved Mark Barron down there last year too from the safety position, and I think that's going to be great. He was crazy athletic. He's crazy strong. He was just a big hitter at Alabama. And I think he wasn't necessarily a safety in the NFL, so now they got that hybrid position that the Cardinals kind of invented. He fits in great right there. But the defense, most of the time, can't win you games. This one probably can win you a few games, which is pretty impressive. But I think they're going to be a little bit better than the 49ers. I got them at 6-10, just because, like Jonah said, they somehow always get 6, 7, or 8 wins. So 6-10, but I think they're a lot of pieces away on offense, and hopefully they can get those pieces while the defense is still relatively young.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, their defense can win them a few games, but their offense is not going to win them many, if any. So I think I have them at 6-10 as well. It's a game worse than last year, and I'm predicting that this will be the year that they finally fire Jeff Fisher and get some new blood in here, which I think is badly needed.
So that will get us out of the bottom of the division into the fun stuff of the division. 2 of the better teams in football, and we're going to start with the Seahawks.
Yeah, so the Seahawks seem to, their hallmark in the Pete Carroll era has always been their defense, especially their secondary, and they still have that trio, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, which is, I don't think anybody would argue with you that that's the best 1-2-3 punch in the secondary in the entire NFL. And that definitely raises their floor as a team, no matter what happens on offense, which I'll get to. And it's not just their secondary that's great. Bobby Wagner is one of the best inside linebackers in the league. They have Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett rushing the passer. They're always adding new people. They just drafted Jaron Reed to play on the inside of the line. They're always getting impact contributors on this defense. There's little reason to worry about this defense not being superb. And I think that means that the Seahawks are, I don't know, as long as that defense is good, and it has been through several coordinators, as long as that defense is solid, this is going to be a solid team, in my opinion. The offense has some questions. I'm not as low on it as other people are. They've obviously had a lot of turnover on their offensive line. I don't love the Jamarcus Webb starting at right tackle idea. We saw that not work out super well in Chicago. Although he was playing left tackle a lot of the time there, so that's going to be a little easier for him. But they always seem to make something out of nothing on the offensive line. And their offensive line is never great. It was pretty much ripped apart by the Panthers in the playoffs last year. So they're going to need to make some improvements on that. But I have confidence that they'll be able to do that. Obviously, Russell Wilson has proved himself to be more than a game manager type. He's a guy who really can go out and win you games. And he's made solid receivers out of guys like Jermaine Kearse and Tyler Lockett, who weren't that highly touted coming out of college. So I think this remains a really good team, despite some losses they always have. They always look for somebody signs, and then they don't succeed as much outside of Seattle, as you know, with Walter Thurman. But they're always able to kind of move that revolving door and get past it and make impact. And I think the Seahawks are going to be really good again.
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks are always good, like Jonah said. Defensively, I don't understand. They're just always good. It doesn't matter who you put into a position. They always play well for that team. And that is a huge credit to Pete Carroll. He is such a player's coach. He knows how to motivate people. He knows how to give people the ego that they need to play on that defense. He gives them the utmost confidence in themselves. The only question that I have in the defense is who's going to fill Bruce Irvin's spot. And I know the players on the roster already that can fill his spot. But I think it might be Frank Clark, who they drafted last year as a pass rusher. He's very, very, very good. He's athletic enough to slide into a linebacker spot from D end. And I think that he would be a great fit in that Bruce Irvin style of linebacker. Bobby Wagner is the most underappreciated defensive player, or actually the most underappreciated player in the NFL, because he is so good. He's the second best linebacker behind Luke Kuechly, but he's going to win you games just by his intelligence and his play. So their defense is just as good as it's always been, probably even better. They just keep getting better no matter what happens. Offensively, Marshawn is gone. That gives the reins to Russell Wilson. And they also showed last year that Thomas Rawls is a freak, and he can really play the running back position. They have other pieces. They just drafted Procise out of Notre Dame, so he's going to help out. Then the receivers, the receiving core always looked thin to me. Now it looks deeper for some reason, probably just because of the breakout year that Doug Baldwin had, and Tyler Lockett's pretty freaking good too. The O-line question marks have always been there and are still there, like Jonah said, but you luckily have the most athletic quarterback, or one of the most athletic quarterbacks behind that O-line, and Russell Wilson can always make plays for himself. And he really had a breakout year in terms of passing last year. I mean, Doug Baldwin caught like 10 passes for the last couple weeks. So I think that they are back. They kind of fell off after that loss to the Patriots, and by falling off, I mean going like 10-6 and making the playoffs. But I think they're still back on that same path they were on earlier. The only problem that I have this year with the Seahawks is their schedule is a little tough. There's from week 10 to week 14, a little 5-game stretch. They play at New England, home against the Eagles, at the Bucks, home against the Panthers, at the Packers. So at the end of the season right there, that's 5 really tough games. 4 really tough games. And they're going to need to win probably probably 4 of those just in order to put a claim on the division, because I think the Cardinals are going to be really good this year. So I can't see them winning this division just because of how difficult that schedule is that stacks up. Again, wouldn't be surprised if they do, but I have them at 10-6 just because of the difficulty of the schedule. Still making the playoffs. This team is going to make a lot of noise this year, and I could easily see them in the Super Bowl even though they wouldn't win the division.
Yeah, I just want to make one point on the defense before I give a record prediction. The point you made about the Bruce Irvin spot and who's going to fill it, I think I wasn't thinking about Frank Clark filling that spot, but that does make a lot of sense actually, because what the Seahawks can do, what they have the freedom to do since their secondary is so good, is that they can use a 4-3 outside linebacker as predominantly a pass rusher, which is a luxury that most teams don't have. So that's just part of why their defense is so effective. I just want to throw that little note in there. I think I have the Seahawks at 11-5. I think they'll be a game better than last year. I think, like you said, their schedule is difficult. Arizona also does not have an easy schedule.
Right.
They have to line out on the road instead of going to play Tampa Bay. However, I think the big difference is Arizona gets the Patriots while Brady's still suspended, and
right.
yeah, and then when he's back. So I think that's a big difference. I think that means Arizona is probably going to win their New England game, and Seattle probably won't in my mind. So I think this is going to be really close for the division. But I have Seattle at 11-5, a game better than last year. I have a ton of confidence in this team.
Yeah, I mean, like this is a 2-horse race in this division, and probably a 2-horse race in terms of who's going to be the 1 or 2 seed in the NFC overall in the playoffs. I mean, I love both these teams, Cardinals and Seahawks. So let's get to the Cardinals now.
Yeah, the Cardinals have really asserted themselves in the top class of the NFL. They
overnight too. It was so fast.
Right, they were considered kind of a sneaky, maybe good team at this time last year, and now everyone is. Yeah, I don't know. Now lots of people are picking them as the best team in the NFC, and I'm not going to really argue too much with that argument. So this is just a team without a lot of holes. I mean, they have a solid receiving core with Larry Fitzgerald, who is still ageless. Michael Floyd, who's taking big steps forward, and John Brown, who's super explosive. Their offensive line is really solid, when it had been a big problem in the past. And obviously David Johnson, their running back, along with Chris Johnson, Andre Ellington, with the third string. So that's another area that has been a problem for Arizona that is less of a problem now. Carson Palmer is the big variable. He had an awesome season last year, and I do believe that Bruce Arians has turned him into a really solid quarterback. Obviously, the success of Arizona is going to depend on whether Palmer stays this good and stays healthy, but I think if he does, there's a really high ceiling on the team, because this defense it's strong in different areas than Seattle's is, but I think it's almost as good of a defense. I think their offense is probably better. They don't have a secondary to sneeze at either. They got Patrick Peterson and Tyrann Mathieu back there. They have that same kind of hybrid linebacker safety position that the Rams have, and they basically invented that with Theo Buchanan, who's been really solid in that role. They just traded for Chandler Jones as a pass rusher, which is an awesome infusion of young talent. Calais Campbell is one of the best defensive linemen in the league that nobody talks about. So I could see them having a little bit of trouble in the front seven, because Chandler Jones had some injury issues, and beyond that, at pass rusher, the cover is a little bit bare. But overall, I think that's pick and miss with this team. I think this team is really solid pretty much all around.
Yeah, I mean, the offense hasn't changed really at all. I honestly don't know if many pieces moved around. They're still just as good. Hopefully, their biggest problem is injuries. Carson Palmer's been known to get hurt. Fitzgerald's a little banged up in training camp, which can be a little concerning since he's getting up there in age. But really, the team is solid. I love their offense. I think their offense will be just as good as last year. Defensively is what I mean, this team really steps out to me defensively. Adding Robert Kimdichie to a defensive line of Calais Campbell with Chandler Jones as a pass rusher is scary to me. I think Kimdichie is so athletic that he can play. They usually play at 3-4, so if he can play like the outside on 3-4, then he would be all over the quarterback, in my opinion, because he's that athletic. Chandler Jones is so good for this team. They've been desperately needing a pass rusher. Now they have one, if not two, in Kimdichie with Calais Campbell. But Tyrann Mathieu, that's somebody we got to talk about, which Jonah just hit on a little bit. But he's back and healthy after his season got cut short last year with injuries. And in my opinion, if you consider that an addition, that's the biggest addition to any team this year. I think Tyrann Mathieu is the best safety in football. And that's a pretty bold statement because there's a lot of good safeties, especially in this division, when you just talk about Earl Thomas. But, I mean, you saw him at LSU. He was a ball hawk, and his only problem was maturity and not making dumb decisions. Basically, putting him in line to either play for the Cowboys or for the Raiders. And he turned his life around, and now he's just a great football player on the Cardinals, got a huge paycheck. Patrick Peterson kind of took him under his wing, and, I mean, the kid now is just showing every skill he has, and he's playing with the biggest chip on his shoulder because nobody thought he could do this after what happened in college. So, I'm a huge Tyrann Mathieu fan. I think he's going to be great for a long time. He's got competition in the division just for the best safety with Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, but the dude is unreal. That's really the only way I can put it. I mean, everything he does on a football field, I think, helps his team win. As soon as he steps over the white line, he's going to instantly do something to help you win. Whether it's chase a guy down and poke a ball out at the 1 yard line, or tackle a guy at the 1 yard line, then get a defensive stand to force a field goal. I mean, he's going to make a play for you that's going to win you a football game. Not to mention they also have a top 5 cornerback with him in Patrick Peterson. I really like the defense of this team, especially the secondary, and I think they're going to be really good. I think this is going to be the best team in football this year.
Yeah, I think I don't think I'm going to give them the best record in football. I know they made improvements to a team that was already. I think a lot of things went right for them last year also, though, and I think not all of them will go right again this year just, because teams don't have the same injury luck every year. I mean, Fitzgerald stayed healthy all year. Palmer stayed healthy all year. It was great. Tyrann Mathieu finally didn't get hurt, but, this is a team that's had injury problems in the past and largely avoided them last year, which doesn't mean that their success was all luck, because it wasn't. There's a lot of great players on this team, and I still think they're going to be really good. But I'm going to put them at 11-5, winning the division on the tiebreaker with Seattle. That's not any reflection on what I think the talent of this team is. I just think it's likely that they'll have more injury issues this year than they did last year. So that's where I got them.
Yeah, I have them at 13-3, which was a pretty solid team by that standard. I just think that they're just better than they were last year, and I know a lot of things did fall their way last year, but I still think they have the talent and the ability to do the same thing, if not be better. But this division, I could honestly see the Cardinals going 10-6 and the Seahawks going 13-3. So, I mean, both these teams are very, very good. We're going to hear a lot about both these teams all year long, and we'll see both these teams in the playoffs. I have no doubt about that, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch, I think. So, Jonah, do you have the Seahawks in the playoffs?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah, 11-5. Yeah, so by our standards, we have the Cardinals and the Seahawks in the playoffs. Both of us have the Cardinals winning the division, which would give the Seahawks the wild card, probably the first wild card. But we are going to move on to the NFC South and talk about first the New Orleans Saints. So get ready for some arguments here because Jonah and I strongly disagree on this team. But in my opinion, the offense of the Saints got better. Added Michael Thomas, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, and Kobe Fleener, who I think is going to be a pretty solid possession receiver for them, even though he plays tight end. You add that to Willie Snead and Brandon Cooks. So I think that's going to be pretty nice for Drew Brees, who's still a great quarterback, still a top 5 quarterback. The running back position, who I think it's okay with Mark Ingram and CJ Spiller. Excuse me. Defensively, they added James Laurinaitis and Nick Fairley, both good players. I think Laurinaitis is going to be extremely helpful to be the middle linebacker there and signal caller because they've kind of lost their way defensively. Thanks in large part to Rob Ryan coming over to single-handedly ruin everything that went well in New Orleans, and now he's gone, so they should be okay. Linebacking core, they have Stephon Anthony, who I think is good. LRB is okay as more of a pass rusher than a linebacker. James Laurinaitis, like we just said. And then secondary, I like, if they can stay healthy ever, Kenny Vaccaro, Jarvis Byrd, they have Keenan Lewis, and Delvin Breaux. Delvin Breaux kind of stood out last year to me just watching him play against Odell. He was pretty solid. Obviously they gave up 49 points and still won the game, but he played well. I like Von Bell also, who they drafted out of Ohio State. But yeah, this team, the Saints have always been about their offense, and that's fine. Teams can win that way. We've seen it pretty much early on in Tom Brady's career. It was always the offense that was winning him games. Peyton Manning never had a good defense. But this team needs a little bit of a defense because their offense isn't the greatest thing ever. I think you're going to see Michael Thomas be an absolute stud this year for Drew Brees. But with all that being said, they're still not that great of a football team. I think they're better than Jonah thinks they are, but they at least have pieces to work with, and I will never doubt Drew Brees, especially because he beat the Giants 52-49 last year, and I thought we would never lose a game if we scored 40 points. So, needless to say, we did, and that just shows you that the offense can win you games. They're not going to put up 52 a game, but if they can score in the 30s, maybe 5 or 6 times, they should win those 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, I think there are definitely pieces on this team, like you said. I like Brandon Cooks. I like Tron Armstead, their left tackle. Obviously, Drew Brees is Drew Brees. And I like the additions of Fairley and Laurinaitis in the defense. However, I think overall, this is a pretty bad team, in my opinion. Obviously, if salary cap management were like a position on the depth chart, they'd have the worst in the league, which it's not necessarily a problem for this year, but it's going to be a big problem down the line for them. They just keep extending their players into oblivion, and eventually they're going to have to deal with that. But that's not what we're talking about here. I just think with looking at the talent on the field, there's names that jump out to you, but looking at the defense specifically, this was like the worst defense in like recent NFL history last year. And so they gave up 476 points last year, which was by a pretty solid margin, the most in the league. And I think that problem is maybe slightly helped, but I don't think they're finishing higher than 30th in defense again this year. And it's really tough to have a good team that way. Their first round pick, Sheldon Rankins, is out for at least half the season with a fractured leg he suffered in training camp. So that's one big defensive addition that's off the board. You talked about their secondary. I do think Delvin Breaux is solid. But if you look at the rest of the secondary, Kenny Vaccaro was benched last year because of how bad he was. Jarvis Byrd hasn't been good since he's come over from Buffalo at all. I like the Laurinaitis addition, but like Now Ellerby was only good in the Baltimore system. He did pretty much nothing in Miami. And I think they're going to have trouble rushing the passer outside of Cameron Jordan. I think Fairley's going to help with that, but I don't love the rest of what they have on the defensive line. And I do think this defense will be better, but it would be pretty hard for them not to be better because of how bad they were last year. And I just think that there have been some minor improvements on this team, but I think they were pretty lucky to finish as high as 7-9 last year with that defense that they had. Obviously, you put a lot of that on Drew Brees, but if they suffer some injuries this year, which is certainly possible, I think that they're going to have a hard time matching what they did last year, even on offense. I mean, Mark Ingram had a pretty solid year last year, but that was pretty much his first in the NFL. And C.J. Spiller, their other addition from Buffalo, has given them virtually nothing as well. So I think they've had a hard time identifying talent in free agency and getting them to play in New Orleans, which is why I'm a little bit skeptical of the impact of Laurinaitis and Fairley and later additions that you talked about. I just think Michael Thomas will be good, but I think this is a team where the whole is less than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, the thing I like about, I don't know, they're not that much better than they were last year, but to finish 7-9 and be the worst defense in like the history of the universe, I mean, you're doing something right offensively. So their defense got a little bit better this year. I mean, they're not a top 20 defense, but you could see them 25 or 24. And with Drew Brees, you still have a chance. I don't think they're going to be better than they were last year. I have them at 6-10, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs or anything. I just don't think they're going to be like the worst team ever, like they should have been last year. I just have too much faith in Drew Brees. And the thing with Mark Ingram, this is the first time he's ever really gotten. I mean, last year was the first year he actually got the ball. Like they had Chris Ivory, who was their go-to for a couple of years when Ingram was young. And they've always had a stockpile of running backs. Tim Hightower, you name it, they've had the running back. And Mark Ingram never seemed to be ahead of any of those guys. I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if they outperformed him in camp or what happened, but now it's Mark Ingram's team, and he can run the ball whenever he wants, and he did that last year, and we kind of saw how it worked. So I think he's going to take the reins again. And then, like I said, Michael Thomas is going to be good, and you still have Brandon Cooks and Willie Snead. So I think their offense has a lot of firepower, but like I said, 6-10, and I don't think they're going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do see that argument. I think the best argument for this is that they finished 7-9 last year, even with that defense.
Right.
I do think that was probably like a little bit outperforming how good they were.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have them at 4-12. I could certainly see them finishing higher than that. But just looking around the NFC, I think that they have more holes than almost anyone else I can see in the NFC. So while ordinarily Drew Brees gives them a really high floor, I just think it's going to be tough for this team to overcome the holes that they have, and I think that the Saints really need to find a way to kind of reboot here and kind of make up for how their cap situation is.
Yeah, needless to say, they're not going to make the playoffs. Obviously, you can see that by the records that Jonah and I just predicted. But they need to figure something out relatively quickly because their quarterback's old, and that's their only shot in anything, really. But we will move on to the Falcons now. Offensively, the Falcons have not lived up to that 13-3 record they had a couple years ago. I really don't know where that 13-3 record came from. They were very good, and I don't know how they were that good earlier. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But they're pretty thin at receiver, and they kind of always have been. The thing that helps you there is Julio Jones, just kind of like the Giants were last year. With Odell, if you have a receiver that's that good, who the hell cares who the other receiver is? It hasn't hurt him in the past, but I could see, I don't know. I mean, if Julio Jones ever gets hurt, this team is never going to win a game. Matt Ryan, Matty Ice, has lost the ice. He hasn't been that great in the past couple of years. I mean, the offense is okay. Devontae Freeman really stood out last year. And Tevin Coleman was supposed to be great too. He got hurt, so he kind of lost the ability to be the two-headed monster I think that they could have this year. Offensively, they're good enough. I mean, like I said, just get another receiver, and they tried to do that, but I don't really like Mohamed Sanu that much. Defensively, I trust them just because of Dan Quinn. I think he was a great defensive coordinator in Seattle. I think he can be a good head coach. I like the linebacking core a lot, but the secondary is very weak. I don't like a lot on the defense in terms of individual players. I just trust Dan Quinn to put it together. I don't think this team is going to be that good this year, though. Again, I think the offense will win them some games, just like the Saints' offense will win them some games. But I don't know. I've never really liked Matt Ryan as an NFL quarterback, just because he'll be so great, and then he'll have to play in a big game or something, and it just won't go well, or he'll have one bad game, and then the wheels fall off the entire offense. And I don't know. Something about the Falcons has always made me not trust them, so I think it's going to continue this year.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan is sort of like the reverse Eli Manning, where he plays super well in games that don't really matter, and then doesn't play well in games that do matter.
Right.
Where he often doesn't play well in games that don't matter. It's even though an individual game might not be big, those games add up. So
no, Eli would lose to the Browns and have 6 interceptions, and then throw for 7 TDs and either beat the Patriots or lose by just a field goal or something.
Right, exactly. And those games count the same in the regular season anyway.
Right.
I think a similar result out of guys like Matt Ryan, Eli Manning, at least in the regular season.
Right.
I like Matt Ryan, I think, a little bit more than you do. That might just be because I have memories of the year they almost made the Super Bowl a couple years back. This team doesn't look like they did then. But I think the Falcons are, in some ways, a better version of the Saints. They have a lot of pieces too, but I think they fit better than the Saints pieces do. And I trust their staff to, especially Dan Quinn, to get those pieces to play as more than some of their parts, especially on defense. You look at Sean Payton in New Orleans, he's not a defensive coach.
Right.
They've had problems with the defense, just finding the right coordinator. I think Dan Quinn is going to be able to put together the pieces on the defense. And there are pieces here. I mean, they have Adrian Claiborne, Derek Shelby, Courtney Upshaw, Brooks Reed, just added Dwight Freeney. So maybe only 2 of those guys work out as good pass rushers, but that's all you need. They have a lot of pieces to be able to do that. I think he's sort of trying to build his Seattle defense in Atlanta, and the way you see that happening, especially in the secondary, I think he's kind of turning Desmond Trufant into his Richard Sherman.
Yep.
He's not as good as Richard Sherman, but he's a very solid.
Yes, absolutely.
Top in the league. I like Robert Alford at the other corner. He hasn't had the same results as Trufant yet, but I liked what I saw from him in college. I think he's going to be pretty solid. And they just drafted Keanu Neal in the first round as a strong safety. A lot of people kind of saw that as a reach, but I think Dan Quinn sees him as the Cam Chancellor of this defense, and I think that he's going to be able to live up to that. He's a hard-hitting safety. He's the kind of guy that the Falcons have needed to sort of make big plays on this defense. They got Sean Witherspoon back, who had kind of a couple of years in the wilderness with Atlanta, but went to Arizona last year and had success, and they brought him back. So I like what I see from this team in a lot of ways. Like you said, though, if Julio Jones gets hurt, they're probably toast, because I'm not a big fan of Mohamed Sanu either, and they don't have a lot of depth at receiver. Their offensive line has some good pieces on it, but especially on the interior of the line, it's pretty old and also carries a pretty high injury risk. So Yeah, I think this Falcons team is pretty good. I think it's a team that could possibly make the playoffs, but I'd probably have them falling just short. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have them worse than the Saints, actually. I have the Saints at 6-10. I have the Falcons at 5-11. Just because, I don't know. I mean, everything you said is 100% true. Desmond Trufant's great. I just don't like anything else in that secondary. I don't really like Keanu Neal very much. And I think it's, like, the comparisons you made are what they're going for, and those players have the ability to be similar, but they're never going to be within 100 yards of being those kind of players, in my opinion at least. Like, Keanu Neal, I don't think will ever come close to Cam Chancellor, although he has that same play style like you were comparing him to. And I know you weren't saying he's going to be the same player. But, I mean, this is Julio Jones' team. He's the lead dog. He's the horse pulling the carriage. And he's great, don't get me wrong. I don't know. For some reason, I've never been high on the Falcons. I've never joined the bandwagon, even when they were that great. I don't know how they were that great, like I said. So I think it's kind of a little bit of the same kind of thing. So 5-11.
Yeah, I have the Falcons at 8-8. They're going to be a great team. I think it's possible they could knock the door again. Like last year, they started off 6-0, I believe.
Yeah.
So the talent's clearly there, but they do have to play Seattle and Green Bay, and so they have tough games to play. I think that this is a team that, in a vacuum, is capable of making the playoffs, but ultimately, I don't think they'll be better than they were last year.
Right. So we will move on to the Buccaneers then, a team that's on the up and up with Jameis Winston at quarterback. I really like their offense. Re-signing Doug Martin was a very smart decision in my opinion. I think Mike Evans, if he can figure out the drop situation, he'll be a very, very, very good wide receiver, if not already. Vincent Jackson's good. I mean, they seem like they're stockpiling receivers over 6'4", which will work out for pretty much anyone, I think. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I think, will be a good tight end, especially because he's like 6'7". The only thing I'm worried about is that Vincent Jackson's a step slower at the very least. Mike Evans, like I said, with the drops, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins has never really, I guess, stood out the way he should. So I'm a little worried there's not enough options for Jameis, but I still think Jameis is going to be great. And I still think that he has enough talent to make these receivers better. Defensively, they added Robert Ayers from the Giants, who was great for us in pass rushing situations. He's a little up there in age, and I don't know that he's an every down defensive end, but he's definitely going to get some sacks for you. Noah Spence is a nice addition if he can mature and stay out of trouble. He's been a great pass rusher his entire career. I like the linebackers. I like the cornerbacks. I mean, they have a lot of pieces on this defense. I'm really worried about the safeties. I don't like Conti at all. I mean, yeah, they have some problems. So they're going to need their front seven to be really good, and I think they can be pretty good, but it's still a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, if it were up to me, the Bucs should forfeit all of their games this season for the offense of taking a kicker in the second round.
and hold on.
Kicker.
He also missed his first extra point as a kicker in the NFL after them trading up to get him in the second round.
They should forfeit their season for that. That's what's going to happen. I think that the Bucs, this is a team with a lot of young guys with potential. I think they're still a year away in my mind.
Yes.
And I don't think that they're not going to be solid this year. They're going to show flashes. I think Winston's really good. I agree with you that Doug Martin was a good addition. Their offensive line is not very good. There's a lot of holes on that line, so Winston is going to probably have some trouble staying upright. I think games against the Panthers are going to be ugly because I think they're just going to get to him a lot. I don't love that the depth. I don't love their depth at receiver behind Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson. and you don't really know what Jackson's going to give you at this point. So I think it's possible that Winston won't really have the weapons he needs to succeed. On defense, though, I do like what they did on defense. I think Ayers probably won't be quite as good outside of New York, but I think he's going to be at least decent here. Obviously, Gerald McCoy is one of the best interior linemen in the league. Monte Davis at weak side linebacker is a criminally underrated player. And they got Darryl Smith from Baltimore. He's going to provide some veteran leadership. They drafted Brendan Hargraves in the first round. So they're making moves to upgrade their defense. I'd like to see them do the same on the offense in next year's draft before I make this team a playoff team. But there's definitely potential here. I'm not knocking this team at all. I just think it's a little bit too soon for them for me.
Yeah, I mean, you talked a lot about Jaguars and the Raiders being a year away. I think the Bucs are extremely a year away. This is like they've made the slow progression as they should have. Once they drafted Jameis, they got a little bit better, then a little bit better, and now this is the time to get hopefully a lot better after the season. Like each player should get a little bit better throughout this year, and then next year they should take off. That's at least the way that it should work. It rarely ever works that way, but I think they have the talent to make that happen. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're still pretty good. So I have them at 9-7, just barely missing out on a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm going to have the Bucs at 7-9, and I'm going to bump my Falcons prediction up to 9-7. Just as the way I have this division looking in my head. I think that the Bucs will be a little bit better than last year. That is a one-game improvement. I think a lot of that improvement is going to come from Jameis Winston being better, because I think he had a lot of potential, and he showed a lot of potential, and he was just a rookie QB last year. So I think that his improvement will take this team a pretty fair way. Their new coaching staff and everything this year, I just like to give them a year and give them like a wait-and-see approach.
Right. So we'll move on to the Panthers then. Last but not least, the best team in the division. I don't think anyone would argue with that. Offensively, it's literally the exact same offense, except for one thing, and that's Kelvin Benjamin, who is a superstar, at least has the ability to be a superstar. That's huge for this team. I mean, Cam Newton was throwing to Ted Ginn Jr. last year, who's was never given a chance at receiver. Always was taken as a kick returner and just a speedster on the outside who would catch a deep ball here and there, but always dropped passes. And he took that team to the Super Bowl. So I don't know how he did it, but he did it. So now you have Kelvin Benjamin to go alongside Greg Olsen, as that's a scary pass-catching duo for a great quarterback who's crazy athletic. The offense took leaps and bounds last year, and now they're getting their best receiver back. And he's the best receiver by far on that team. It's not even really close. So that's going to help them a ton if he stays healthy, obviously, and if the knee is back to 100%. Defensively, they got a great front seven. I mean, it's the same old for them. Kuechly's great linebacker. Thomas Davis, Quan Short, Star Lotulelei. I mean, they have a lot. Charles Johnson's healthy again. Lost Jared Allen, which I don't know that'll hurt him that bad, but obviously lost Josh Norman. I am probably one of the few that don't think it's going to hurt them at all. I never really was a fan of Josh Norman, for
Really, why not?
For noted reasons. And I can't wait to watch Odell torch him 2 more times this year. But Josh Norman, I think Jonah agrees with me, was more of a product of the Panthers system than he is a great corner himself. He's a good corner. I won't take that away from him. But there's other good corners that can play for the Panthers. And I think Ben Weaker is very good. At least will be very good. I think this is the year he's going to take a step after last year. He was a little bit injured during the beginning of the year, but he's got all the tools it takes to be a good corner. And with the front seven that they have, it doesn't really matter. I mean, They do have one of my favorite players in the draft in Jeremy Cash. He looks like he's going to play that hybrid linebacker role that we've been talking about a little bit here on the podcast. I like him a lot, and that's pretty well documented also. So I think this team's very good again. They're going to be fighting with the Cardinals, in my opinion, for the number 1 seed, and probably the Seahawks too, depending on who wins that division. But this team's very good.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers won't be 15-1 again because you won't finish 15-1 2 seasons in a row.
Right.
So, like, my record prediction is going to be, technically a downgrade from last season, but I don't think this team is really significantly worse. I think their offense, which scored more points than any other team in the league last year, is like they return the same offense plus they add Kelvin Benjamin, like you said. So I think there's not a lot of ways that this could go wrong for them on offense. I think that Cam Newton is currently one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the league, and obviously that will take you really far no matter what kind of weapons you have. As we saw last year when they scored 500 points last season with Ted Ginn as the number 1 receiver and Jericho Cotchery as the number 2, who was like on one leg by the end of the season. Their offensive line was a huge pleasant surprise last year. People thought Michael Orr wouldn't work out as left tackle, and he certainly took his lumps, but he was as solid as they could have possibly asked for. And obviously, on defense, their front 7 is very possibly the best in the NFL. As long as Charles Johnson can stay healthy, I think they're not going to have any problems with the pass rush. Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis might be the best 2 linebackers anybody has. The one issue here is with the secondary. I agree with you that the loss of Josh Norman is probably not going to be as huge as people think. However, the secondary wasn't awesome last year, and it is definitely worse without Josh Norman.
Correct, yeah, absolutely.
Right, it's not like it'll be a disaster. They're returning their safeties in Kirk Coleman and Trey Boston, who were pleasant surprises last year. But they do have Benny Wickery, who was pretty solid in his rookie year, didn't do as much last year because Josh Norman kind of took the reins. But I think it is a problem that their top 3 cornerbacks from the depth chart are all rookies. And in James Bradbury, Dow Worley, and Zach Sanchez. Now, one of those guys will probably be really good, but probably only one of them because that's how it is with rookie corners. They might be good eventually, for sure, but we always see rookie cornerbacks struggling with adjusting to the NFL. So, it doesn't mean these aren't good players, but it's obviously not a super reliable strategy to just throw 3 rookie corners at the problem and hope it solves it.
Right.
If it was me, I probably would have picked a corner in the first round rather than taking Vernon Butler, who I like, but I probably would have just thrown as much of my resources as possible at corner. They did obviously throw 3 picks at the position, so I can't argue with it that much, but it's certainly a gamble in the secondary. I think if there was ever a team where there was a front 7 that could make up for the deficiencies in the secondary, this is it. So I don't think their defense is going to be a disaster by any means. I mean, it was awesome last year. They were obviously ripping apart even teams with 2 quarterbacks. And we saw against Seattle. I mean, Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, but they shut him down last year, even though the secondary wasn't great because their front 7 was so good. And if you believe, as we both do, that Josh Norman was somewhat a product of this system, then you have to also believe that that system can make decent corners out of these new guys, and I think that will probably happen. I think Carolina is going to be the best team in the NFC again this year.
Yeah, everything you said is 100% correct. I mean, I don't know how, like we were kind of just saying, they just became good, and it has everything to do with Cam Newton. I mean, before Cam got there, they were terrible, and then he slowly made them a little bit better, and now they're a lot better. What he did with that offense is really incredible. I mean, I don't know that there's many other quarterbacks out there that can do what he did with that offense. I think that if you put that receiving core onto the Patriots, let's say that Greg Olsen and Gronk wash out and you don't count the tight ends, which is probably unfair to Gronk just a little bit. If you just gave that receiving core to the Patriots and had Tom Brady throw, that was probably the worst receiving core that Tom Brady would have ever had. He's had some pretty bad ones. So that's saying a lot to go 15-1 with a team like that. And they really should have been 16-0. And they kind of choked it away at the end, just not really caring about the game against the Falcons towards the end of the year. But, I mean, yeah, this team is very good. The front seven is very good. And I think that the Panthers have always, I mean, in the recent history, they've drafted pretty well. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin, Cam Newton, you name it. They've had some good draft picks. Luke Kuechly. So for a team to pick Vernon Butler, who fills a position that they are already stacked at, tells me that they feel like they have a very good set of corners on their roster already. To not address the area of need and to even let Josh Norman just walk away, that tells me they're very confident in what they have on defense. And any team that feels that way usually has a pretty damn good reason. So, and then also that also gives the corners on that roster a huge sense of confidence that the team believes in them. So that's a dangerous recipe for a team that's already great. I don't think they're going to be the best defense again. They're definitely going to be top 5. There's no question about it. The front seven's way too good to not be top 5. But I have them at 12-4, so that would be second place in the NFC, and I still have a bye. But they'd easily win this division. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Yeah, I have the Panthers at 13-3. I think they're probably pretty similar teams to how they were last year. I think the secondary is worse, but I think the offense is better. So I think that'll kind of wash. That doesn't mean I think they'll go 15-1 again, obviously, because it takes some things to go right to go 15-1.
Yeah.
I can definitely win 12 or 13 games again this year, and I think they'll be the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, so that will wrap up the NFC West and the NFC South. We each have the Panthers and the Cardinals winning these divisions and being the 2 better teams in the NFC. We still have a couple good teams to go, but next week we will have the NFC North and the NFC East. This is where it's going to get fun. Who really cares about the North? We know it's going to happen. Packers and Vikings are going to be good, but we'll still talk about it at the beginning, go through it pretty quick. But then comes the NFC East, where everybody disagrees anyways, and then you add a Giants and Cowboys fans talk about it, it really gets some disagreements. So,
yeah, unpredictable division anyway, and we have very strong opinions on it.
Yes, exactly. Completely unpredictable, yet both of us know exactly what's going to happen. That's how it works.
Exactly.
So, we will see you back here next week, and thanks for listening.